I was told that Robert Saleh, current head coach of the New York Jets, former defensive coordinator of the 49ers, effectively tilted you in this whole direction that created this microeconomy of millions of dollars just with some offhanded comment during an interview when your career was somewhat stuck. Is that correct? And can you fill in the blanks?
Yes, this really happened. So 2018, I was doing, I was so fixated on how bad Mike McGlinchey was. So after every practice, I would go live and stream about what Mike McGlinchey did and how Cassius Marsh beat him one-on-one and how that's not good. And before one practice, Robert Saleh walks up to me. I'd never talked to him privately, and I'd already fired him multiple times on Twitter and in print. And he walks up to me because, Grant, man, I love your post-practice streams. I watch them every day, or I listen to them every day on my drive home from work. I'm like, oh my God, what? Really? It's like, the only thing is like, you really like conspiracy theories. Instead of going that route, just call me up. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. So that's how I got Robert Saleh's number. And then like later that year, I wanted to do a story for the Press Democrat, who were pretty much phasing me out at that point, to really impress him. And I was going to like get Robert Saleh on the record talking about the upcoming Super Bowl. And he was like, I don't really want to do that, Grant. Like, I want to help you. I don't really want to do that. But I see you applied for that job at the Sacramento Bee and you didn't get it. And you need to change something about what you're doing because it's not working. And I think you really have something to offer with videos. I think videos are the way for you to go. I think you don't necessarily have to create controversy. What you can do is educate people on videos. And I started off with a lot of like film breakdown. And that's how I really got into YouTube, was like with that. And then more talking, more like talk show style stuff became easier. And more people watch that than really only a few people are going to watch all 22 stuff. I learned that one pretty quick. But yeah, Robert Saleh pointed me in the YouTube direction. And when he sees me, he gives me a big hug and he's very proud.
See, you filled in some blanks. I had retold the secondhand story a little bit not like the way you told it. My version was that he effectively offhandedly said, go on YouTube. And then you go on YouTube, you become this massive success. Your version, a little bit more nuanced, a little bit different. This is what happens when you tell secondhand stories. I mean, you've become quite the performer on YouTube. I was laughing to myself watching your mini camp reveal because you were really drinking in the anticipation of the audience to kick off your video. So you're walking, it's POV. Is that what we call it? Or just selfie video, maybe is what we call it. Like you so often do, walking and talking off of the mini camp. And you're telling your audience, yes, we'll get to it. I know you want to hear. I know you want to hear. And you're really drinking it in with a drum roll. Has that become second nature to sort of feel that kind of anticipation and, toy around with it as you did?
Yeah, I think the reason my career took off once I got to video as opposed to when I was writing these as blog entries is because I think as a writer, I don't do as good of a job as you or my dad as bringing all of my personality into it. So when I do the good and the not so good, it can come off a little harsh on the not so good section. Whereas when I talk, I think I can show that like I'm smiling. There's a twinkle in my eye. Like I'm not trying to crush any of these players. And I'm kind of a silly person. And I think I can sort of put all of that onto screen better than I can as a writer, I'd have to say.
Yeah, there's a tongue in cheek. Sometimes you're sarcastic in a way that's a little bit interesting. And it's very much, it would be difficult to convey that in a writing setting. It would be far different. I feel like your personality either is different or contains different facets than I would have known about having met you. I'm not accusing you of being somebody different. I think we all have different personalities for different settings, for different situations. I'm different with my mom than I am on this podcast, right? When I met you and we talked about it in this podcast, you were at that career crossroads aforementioned, and you were, I would say, I wouldn't say meek, but you were polite. You weren't brash when you were meeting for lunch with Marcus Thompson and myself, asking what should I do with my career, and we had no idea that you would find this success and this was the way. And then I see you on these YouTubes, and I kind of sound so old saying that. On these YouTubes is where I see you, and you're a little bit, you're kind of a bombastic performer in this way. Have you grown into that with success, or was that part of you the whole time? I mean, success will change your personality.
I've always been a bit of a performer. Like, I took acting classes in my high school and stuff, and I was on this thing called the campus ministry team, and we would have to do skits in front of the school at the what are they? I'm not Christian. What are they called? Liturgies? What are they called again? I don't know.
Sounds right. I think we have the same problem here, Grant.
I've always liked to put myself out there like that, and I think the reason I didn't is I was really unsuccessful, and I was sitting with you and Marcus Thompson, and you guys are really successful and have been for a long time. And I was late to the party. So I think in terms of like, if you knew me growing up, I'm exactly like this. But professionally, it took me a while to find my voice because I knew most of my peers thought I shouldn't be there. I'm nepotism boy. It was tough to get a footing for a long time. And I felt kind of like a fraud, like an imposter, until I built my own thing.
Do you ever think about that when you mention the nepotism thing? Because there are a lot of people who don't know that your father was a very well-established columnist in the Bay Area, Lowell Cohn. I love the streams you guys do together, the Cohn Zone, where it's father and son in the same industry, only it's all a little bit different. I find it fascinating. But do you ever think of the symmetry of how ruthless you guys are to Kyle Shanahan, who has the same sort of reputational exposure with Kyle Shanahan having this legendary Super Bowl winning head coach of a father, and that odd symmetry where I'm watching father and son in one industry just crush the son in another industry. It amuses me. I want to know what you make of it.
It's kind of like two people who look the same, are the same, just hating each other, like two neighbors who are exactly the same. I can't stand that guy over there. He always does this, this, and this. Yeah, that's what I do. I mean, really, the similarities between me and Kyle are just endless. We both went into the family business. We both have big shoes to live up. I mean, big shoes to fill. And we're both both been called nepotism boys for a long time. I'm not saying I'm as successful as he is. Obviously not. That guy's so rich. But yeah, sometimes I'm thinking, like, am I acting like Kyle right now? Am I more like Kyle than I want to give myself credit? Because I'm awfully critical of him. Am I like that too? Sometimes I might be. I don't think I could win a Super Bowl as a coach. I think I would crumble under pressure. I don't think I'm built for pressure. I don't think I could.
That's interesting. I feel like you've got some tendencies. I'm not saying that you would be a great NFL coach. I think an NFL coach requires a smorgasbord of different skills, but that's not the one that I would anticipate being the flaw. I feel like you have a disagreeable personality, which would be good for coaching, be good for pressure. When Javon Kinlaw was yelling at you, I felt like you didn't crumble in that circumstance. You kind of stayed with what you wanted to go with. I don't see you as very much like Kyle. I feel as though you can laugh at yourself a little bit more. He seems like a serious personality type, and you seem like you got a little more whimsy to you, Grant.
Yeah, I would have to say so. And what's funny is, like, I can get along so well with Robert Saleh and can't connect at all with Kyle Shanahan, and yet they really like each other and they get each other. So I feel like I still feel like there's potential there between me and Kyle. I mean, I've known him for so long. Eventually, I wonder when we're like old and stuff and we don't have to work together anymore, if there will be like I remember you and I hated you for a long time, but I don't anymore. Let's have a drink. I'm waiting for that day.
I've had that with people. I think I had that with Harrison Barnes, where when he came back with the Kings, it was all fine because there was no reason for me to not get along with Harrison Barnes, the guy. He's a great guy. He likes a lot of the things that I like. He's a big stand-up comedy fan. A lot of the comedians I'm a fan of, he's a fan of. I was just in the circumstance where I was describing flaws in his game, and he's got professional pride. So that's just the situation that you're put in, where you're really pissing off somebody who has a lot of their identity invested in their performance, because you're describing whatever negativity, whatever negative assessment you have about it. And then they hate you, but do they really hate you? I think oftentimes maybe, but maybe they really just hate how you're talking about them. They don't know anything about you. I mean, Kevin Durant, when he lashed out at me, did he know anything about me? I don't think so. I mean, maybe if he did, he would have great grounds to hate me anyway, but it's just a situation where they hate the criticism, and that makes sense.
Yeah, but what's interesting is they hate it at the time, but then when they're 50, 60 years old and it's way behind them, they romanticize it. Like, man, when I was a professional athlete, the media was tough. There were guys like Ethan, and there were guys like Grant, and we had to deal with them, and we did deal with them. And guys now, like, so it's like, and then when you see him, then I've seen it with my dad. Like, my dad didn't get along with Jerry Rice necessarily when Jerry was a player, but we went to the Bay Area Sports Hall of Fame like 5-6 years ago, and Jerry gave him a hug. Was like, good to see you. Like, yeah, just because you were the tough guy who chronicled them during their superpower time. Like, it all changes down the line.
It is interesting. You almost become the hill that they had to run up when they were working out, where they hated that hill, but then in retrospect, you become part of the story they tell themselves of what they had to go through. And it totally, the tone of it changes. I had the same thing with David Lee, where I saw him and it was friendly and it was cordial. I don't know if it will ever happen with Kevin Durant. I'm not exactly counting on it. He's a bit of his own unique guy right there, but it is funny. I guess it's this feeling when you're an athlete, they probably feel like they're really in variance, that things could go one way or the other way, especially NFL, where you can get cut, you can get traded. If you're a coach, you can get fired the second there's failure, and the media conversation about you probably feels quite threatening. But once the threat is passed, it's a totally different emotional situation, I would have to assume.
Yeah, and I think the way they think about it is, especially coaches, is who do I own? Who do I have? Who's in my pocket? And usually around here, it's most of them. I'm sorry. Maybe not in New York, not in Philly, but out on the West Coast, like most of the time, you're not going to have too many people who are going to be too critical of the coach, and he can be comfortable around them. And then they're also aware of the ones that they don't own. And those are the ones they don't like, because they're trying to get them all. And 20 years down the line, they'll remember the ones they couldn't quite conquer.